and 6 of that has not been delivered. It's expected, and
the auditor said that.
We're relying.
I mean, he didn't say exactly how much.
But the point is that somebody gets up and says, you're 13 million out of balance. And then down at the end of the speech, he says in parentheses, however, there are things that haven't been accounted for yet that will be. That's what one of the speakers said. Well, the people forget about that after they've heard that there's $13 million out of balance, which is not true. It's quite misleading.
Right.
A council member says the city is facing its largest budget deficit since the state takeover 5 years ago. New figures released yesterday to City Council show there's no surplus at all. Instead, the city is facing a $13 million deficit. But Mayor Don Williamson's administration says their numbers tell a much different story. ABC 12's BC O'Leary joining us live in the studio now with details. BC?
Angie, the numbers released Wednesday by the city's accounting firm took many council members by surprise. Some say the city is clearly in crisis. The mayor's administration says that simply isn't the case.
The bottom line is these numbers don't lie.
They are preliminary financial results that some Flint City Council members say cast a frightening light on the state of the budget. Accounting firm Plant Moran reveals to Council a budget deficit of over $13 million for the 2006-2007 fiscal year.
The revenue's not coming in as the mayor's projected, which is what happened in 99 and 2000. The revenue wasn't there.
But these are not the final numbers. Auditors say the city can expect anywhere between $3.5 to $5 million in additional state revenue and other funds. But that's raising concerns among council members.
There's not going to be enough revenue with the fund balance to cover the deficit to make the payments.
Those numbers were bandied about last night as money that we don't have. It's technically true, but it's not actually the case.
The administration says the numbers are misleading and don't take into account revenue that is expected to arrive. Conroy says there is no deficit. In fact, he says there is a surplus of over $4 million. But there will be more tightening of the budget for the current fiscal year.
In the long term, we've got a real fight to make, and that's why we're working so hard on investing in economic development so this mayor can lead this city out.
As we've said, there are still quite a few decisions to be made on the current budget. The final numbers on the past fiscal year won't come until December's audit. In the studio, BC O'Leary, ABC.
Mayorship here was under attack last night because of the allegation of at least one of the council members saying that this budget was $13 million out of balance. That is patently untrue. And we like 3 years, and it's gone from like nearly $9 million down to this number right here is $4 million. As we start out today, $4 million in the black on the plus side. Now we're going to have to work real hard to make sure that we sustain that $4 million or at least some amount above $1. So we've got from $1 up to $4 million that we've got to be within in order not to have a negative budget this year. And this is the beginning balance, 7107. So we have 11 and a half months to go. I guess it's more than that now. It's nearly 11 months to go to make sure that we sustain that surplus, or at least part of it, to make sure that we don't go in the red. It's a pretty good rule of thumb is to have at least 5% in a municipal or a publicly operated municipality to have a 5% cushion. So that's right about at that if you multiply the budget of, say, $70 million. 7 times 5 would be 35. So, that'd be a little bit above it. So we're going to have to work really hard, and it'll be a task to make sure that we don't overspend. But the history has not been overspending unless we had that balance, that surplus. And the mayor has been extremely strong on that, will continue to be this year. And I would guess that one of the things that he will hone in on will be overtime. Because that is a part of the budget that while we support it in critical matters, such as police and fire at times, or if a water main breaks in the middle of the night or on Sunday morning, we've got to get people out there to address that. But for the most part, the more sedentary departments will not be having overtime. That is, those departments that are not in the critical stage of necessity. So the conversation last night was quite clever, but it wasn't accurate. And the mayor has been, one thing he's been sure of is to say no to various expenditures. And all of the staff and all of the department heads are well aware of that, because we hear that nearly every meeting. So next year is going to be, this coming year is going to be a challenge. But we're starting out with $4 million. And we intend to save some of that by June 30th of 2008 to protect this city and its future. Now, there's no doubt there is reduced income in this city. You can't have a series of plants closing, starting with 83,000 some 30 years ago of General Motors employees down to less than 10, probably going on 5. You can't have a city like that without some reduced income. We're experiencing that. And we've got to guard against that in terms of how much we're going to expend. But it's disingenuous at best to see a seasoned veteran up on that 3rd floor say things to you that are not true, patently untrue. And just let me give you an example of part of it. The state revenue sharing is $19.6 million or thereabouts. $19 million for sure. Typically, we will not have collected all of that in a timely way, but we're going to get it. And in this case, the amount that I think is in arrearage from the state is $6 million. We're going to get it. It's expected. But those numbers were bandied about last night as money that we don't have. It's technically true, but it's not actually the case. That is, the state has appropriated that money, it's forthcoming, and it's a major part of this city's budget. So that's just one example of, I guess, maybe leading the public astray on the notion that this city is out of balance. We are not. It's been done in a professional way. We've increased our bonding value with Wall Street, and if anything were to damage our bond rating, it would probably be because we have lost a major part of our manufacturing in this community. But we're working hard to get replacement, and we're working hard to get new businesses. So the dollars are in place. It's quite simply put there, I think, for you folks to look through. If you have any questions, David Kramer can help. We have people from the budget office here as well, and we have the chief attorney of the city here as well. And so we've all been studying this very closely in concert with the mayor's direction.
I have a question.
Yes.
Many council members we've talked to say that these numbers last night that they received came from Williamson's administration.
Yes, they did. And we send them a snapshot, and it's a really good question. We send them a snapshot each month. That is the finance department. A snapshot. it may not reflect, and didn't reflect, that $6 million that I alluded to as an example with the transportation department. There's all sorts of, there's an encumbrance there of $500,000 in the budget somewhere, which only about $250,000 will actually stick. So that is another $250,000 that will be received and counted after this is over. There's a couple of months that take place after the closing of the budget, that is June 30th, where there are adjustments made. And so, because you just don't get all of the answers, it's not quite like at least my checkbook or possibly your checkbook that has to be exact each month. Because you usually have a predictable income. The city does not. We don't even have a predictable expenditure. So there's some months where we spend more than other months. But the same thing occurred, and David can talk about this, the same thing occurred a year ago. We have a report from a year ago that indicates that the same situation. So I can imagine a new council person up there reading that and not having a grasp of it, but not the one that you heard from.
So with the $6 million from the state, that still leaves $7 million.
Yeah, I'm just saying to you that these are accurate numbers. The $4 million, we're starting this budget year with $4 million. And that is accurate. And that number has receded from around 8 or 9. How high did we go, David? How high did the budget surplus go?
$8.9 million.
Okay, so we went to 8.9. We've been spending that down. And but we've got to be very careful this year on that expenditure. And it's pretty easy to find ways to spend the money, but the mayor will have to put the brakes on some of this stuff and make sure that we do not exceed it. But I'm just telling you, we've got $4 million in the bank ready to start this year. Okay? That is accurate and certified. Come here, Dave. This is David Kramer, a co-assistant director to the finance department.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I've never spoken in public before, so bear with me. I got a call this morning from the administration, and they're saying, you had a budget status report that showed us $10 million in the hole. And I tried to explain to them very quickly that you may have a statement that shows that our expenditures do in fact exceed the posted revenues at June 30th, 2007 by $10 million. As Joe alluded, we have state share revenue that never comes in until after the end of the year. We have income tax revenues as well that come in after the end of the year. And we will have federal grant revenues that aren't going to come in until we report to the federal agency that we've had expenditures. Those are items that we still have to recognize as revenue and then accrue it back to FY07. We do have about $6.5 million of accrued revenue that we're aware of right now. So that $10 million shortfall for the year we're looking at, and roughly as what Joe showed you, is about 4.8. And this is our projection today. Now that is high, but we have to point out to the fact that this is FY07 was the first year when you look at those budgeted revenue numbers, and I believe that it was disseminated to you that showed those $75 million revenue numbers and $75 million expense budget. You'll see that. Of that $75 million revenue number that you're seeing, there's some new counts that we put in when we went to the new GL system and it really, the first year was fiscal year 2007, was budgetary fund balance. That revenue number means that we are going to use fund balance. We're not going to get any revenue for those numbers. And we had budgeted for 2007 almost $3.4 million. So it was planned to take that $1 million, or $3.4 million out of fund balance. Our current projection is 4.8, it's about $1.5 million higher, and that is due that we did have some revenue shortfalls throughout the year.
So that was planned all along, that the fund balance would go down?
Correct.
But this year?
There was $2.7 million at the original FY07 budget. Throughout the year, there were some amendments that were put in. One was to move this is the new account that was with our new general GL system. The contracts and purchase orders that were encumbered in FY06 that had not completed and were still payable in FY07. Well, that budgeted expenditure had to move into the FY07 to match that on the revenue side with a budgetary fund balance of some $400,000. And then there were a couple amendments that happened, I'm not exactly sure when. Council resolutions were adopted to spend an additional $175,000 from fund balance. All total, the budgetary fund balance ended up at 3.394.
Thank you very much, Dave. I think that you can also recollect last night, anybody who was there, that Plant Moran indeed did not say that this city was out of balance. They were very, very clear on that. They didn't get into the political part of the assertions that the media needs to sift through, and I respect that process that you're going to have to find out, but this city and this mayor's tenure that's been the hallmark of this mayor's tenure, is that the budget get balanced, and that yes, we'll use fund balances here and there, but we're not going to go negative. We're just not going to do that. So he's committed to that, and during the political year, I think that it's just something that gets put out there. But the budget is going to be balanced, and yes, we may take money out of the fund balance to do that, but we're going to be very close about it this year, because we are now getting at the 5% level, where if there is some catastrophe, we still need to be able to respond to it. And what's your name? Ellen, any other questions? Yes.
Basically, you're saying that the numbers were just misconstrued. They were just misunderstood.
Well, you could have read them from that report, those monthly reports, yeah. And they could have just been askew because the income had not been reported. Yeah, I mean, we've got 28% roughly. What's 19 million into $70 million budget? Somewhere less than 30% of our budget comes from the state revenue sharing, as well as income tax proceeds from the city that just sometimes don't get in on time. But with the state not being counted in the information you received last night is really misleading, because we worked very hard with the governor of the state to protect revenue sharing in the process this year, and she's done that. So we're getting the same amount of revenue sharing that we got the year before.
You've talked around this a couple times. I just want to directly ask, I mean, you've talked about it, but I just want to directly ask, with the fund balance going down, I mean, it is going down, and it has been the hallmark of the mayor's administration. And should people be concerned that it's gone down and that expenditures were more than revenue.
Well, I think that, the bigger concern ought to be a diminution of income in this city. That is a bigger concern. That is a concern that the mayor has. He speaks of it at staff meeting twice a week, and the seriousness of it. When you take the business out here on Dort and Davidson Road that got saved by none other than Cal Rapson from the UAW, and you've got people that are now at $14 an hour as opposed to $27 an hour, it's quite a difference, not only in their paycheck, but how it gets reflected in the community. Income tax, sales tax, and property taxes. So yes, the mayor is concerned about the community and its ability to recover from all this, and we're working very hard to do that. He's setting the plate. Probably spent somewhere in the area of $50 million on streets. People say, well, how did you do that if the city's broke? We got that through grants, through road tax, through various state and federal programs. So it was hard work to get it, and we worked very hard to make sure the governor was strong enough to insist that revenue sharing stay at least neutral. And she did. So we applaud her for that effort. But in the long term, we've got a real fight to make. And that's why we're working so hard on investing in economic development, so this mayor can lead this city out. But he set the plate. The plate is the infrastructure of this city. He's built all these streets, rebuilt them. He's built 3 bridges just in the past couple of years. He's invested in equipment. I believe there were 60 police cars, pickup trucks, all new equipment that workers can use with pride. So he's turning this city around. People are working now at this city, coming on time and working hard, and I think that's part and parcel of his program.
One thing the councilman made mention of last night, which I'd like to ask about, from the projected 07 revenues in the budget 08 revenues, clearly it looks like even the projected revenues for this year are lower than what the revenues are projected for next year, which he was saying is how the deficit started before us because of revenues being projected too high. I guess how would you, or anyone?
We said no to like $2 million worth of council suggestions for expenditures. The chairperson of the finance committee in the council wanted to build a $19 million Hall of Justice or some such thing out in the backyard. And and there was just a plethora of different expenditures that they put forth. Now, I'm not saying that our department heads didn't as well, but for the council to say that revenues are decreasing, and by implication we're not contributing to that problem is pretty false. But yes, if you're asking the question, it's true. We have a diminishing amount of expected revenue here, and we're just going to have to work harder to make sure it works. But we are going to make sure that the budget is balanced. I've never served in a governmental capacity where we did not balance the budget. This mayor is very strong on that, and he's leading the way. That's why these people downtown and investors are coming in and starting to put some money in place. That's why the Mott Foundation is extremely happy. And you know what? I just think that things are on the uptick in terms of possibilities, but yes, less manufacturing and less commitment from some of the major manufacturers in this community. On over, Dave.
I just want to point out on the 08 budget. I just want to point out that on the budget numbers, on the revenue side, the numbers that council is alluding to, again, include those budgetary fund balance numbers. If you were to subtract those, as Joe has done up here, you'll see that the budget revenues that may have some dollars come in is around $70.4 million that are budgeted. It's still a tad higher than what we're projecting to come in, but again, there were new revenue streams that have been budgeted this year. There's some new operations that are going on, and those are encompassed in this budgetary number. But again, I wouldn't say that it's extremely over budgeted, if you will.
You know, one other thing that the mayor could probably show you a budget that has a much larger fund balance. But what did he do? He decided to pay off the $500,000 owed in the golf fund. He paid off, I believe it was $1.25 million down here at the parking lot near the riverfront. Paid those bonds off. Paid off all those extraneous loans that had accumulated in various departments by previous administration. So he could show you a lot larger fund balance if he wanted to. He chose to be forthright and make his balance sheet clean. And yes, when the mayor took over, there was a borrowing of, I believe it was $6 million, was it? 6 or 7 million. It was a bond that eliminated all of the balance of that $28 million debt. And we still have that to pay, but we're now, I think, on the third year, and it's only a 5 or 6 year payout. We're budgeting that money within this budget right here to pay off that balance. Okay?